So the Forbidden Door tickets went on sale, and it looks like that's going to be another monster show, another monster. That Forbidden Door show. Isn't it funny that how after, what was it, the first or second one, there were a lot of pundits out there who I'm not going to name, people like Raj Giri, who insisted that the concept was dead and that AEW should never do another Forbidden Door because people just don't care.
They don't care.
Yeah. And the Forbidden Door continues to be one of the most successful shows that AEW does on a year in, year out basis, every single year. And this year is going to be no exception with the big, I think they got 11,000 tickets out already, and they're probably going to open up more seats in that O2, which was the worst kept secret in wrestling, by the way, that was going to be the venue it was going to be in. And I think they're piggybacking with a TV that's going to have 5,000 or 6,000 tickets out too. So it looks like the Forbidden Door gate has already crossed 1 million, or likely has already crossed 1 million with the old back of the envelope math. And Meltzer projects that it'll be their third highest gate ever behind the 2 Wembleys. So imagine if they had shut down the Forbidden Door concept when a lot people,
if they listen to these very smart people, if they listen to all these very smart podcasters that all know what they're talking about. Yeah. First count, tickets distributed 11,623. The setup they have right now is 14,234. So only about 2,600 tickets still available with the current setup they have, and that's first count with 109 days to the show. So that thing is going to do pretty well.
It's going to do great. I mean, and it's it's going to do a monster gate. It's already over. It's already into 7 figures. And look, I understand this one is a little bit different because it's it's in the UK and all that. But the Forbidden Door shows, they always do a nice gate. They always do a nice pay-per-view number. A lot of years they're the second or third biggest show that AEW does. So it's been a winner of a concept since they rolled it out, and it still is. And it's interesting because clearly New Japan is not nearly as hot as they were at the time of the first Forbidden Door, right? Because a lot of those guys are working for AEW now. Mm-hmm. So it's like you question how long people were questioning how long the concept would have to where it would still be a legitimate draw and if it was worth doing or worth repackaging or something. But when you have these relationships with CMLL and New Japan and the other thing about Forbidden Door is I think the AEW fan recognizes that it's always a kick-ass show too. And that helps a lot. It's always a really great show. There's always one match that just is a match of the year contender, whether it's Ospreay and Orange Cassidy from the first one, which stole the show, or whether it's something with what was the big
Okada
Bryan Danielson.
Okada Bryan. The original Forbidden Door.
Because I get confused with the other concept show, the Inoki.
Wrestle Dream. I think they did a Wrestle Dream show. Am I right? Or I forget now when that. The people are going to let us know.
Danielson. The chat as soon as the chat catches up. But that show just. Again, I think a lot of the criticism, and you could jump in any time when the chat figures that out if they get to it before you.
That will.
But I think that a lot of the criticism of Forbidden Door, both from the person I mentioned and some others that I won't, the old not wanting to punch down, Rich Craig, lest I be the one whoever punches down. I would never do that. But I think a lot of the criticism from those kind of corners of the world or the wrestling media world, a couple of years ago when it came to Forbidden Door, I think a lot of it came from insecurity because it was a lot of fans enjoying a concept in wrestling that those sorts of fans don't care about and don't enjoy. So it's kind of like pissing in cornflakes. It's like, well, we don't care about New Japan or CMLL or joint shows. So any opportunity to shit on it and say that maybe they shouldn't do it anymore because one year didn't draw as much money as the previous year, we're going to take that because I think that's born out of insecurity.
Of course.
Raj.
Also, their favorite company and the company that they most identify with would never do anything like this.
At least back in those, at least at that time, because now obviously, and they still really wouldn't because they purchased AAA. So you can't really say that Worlds Collide is this. It's similar, but not quite the same.
And even with Worlds Collide, let's be honest, Mystico versus Vikingo and Roman Reigns is not going to be a match on Worlds Collide. You know what I mean? It's going to be NXT guys.
Your point stands either way. It's the promotion I most identify with doesn't do stuff like this, so it must be wrong. Mm-hmm. And also, there's people enjoying this, and I have to find a way to shit on it. So what I'm going to do, it comes from insecurity of, this is not how wrestling's supposed to be done, and so they shouldn't do it anymore. And it's just successful every year. Like every year, Forbidden Door is a massive success. So it just shows that whether you want to use the term niche, I don't. A lot of people use the term niche when it comes to AEW. And some people who are using it as kind of a passive aggressive thing. Oh, they have their niche audience, right? But I see a lot of people who don't even intend it that way, who say, oh, well, AEW is doing great because they've carved out a niche. They have this niche audience. I don't love that term because the fact of the matter is AEW is too big and too successful to call it a niche audience. It just is. They've got a monster media rights deal. They do $1 million gates, multiple times a year at this point. They're going to do another one in Texas. Many hours
of first run television on national television. You know what I mean?
Many hours they've got the 4 hours of first run television on national TV. Dynamite consistently, since it has existed, has been a top 5, sometimes number 1 show on cable in its night, at worst a top 10 show. They have a monster media rights deal. They're going to do at least $2 million plus gates this year because they're going to do another one in Texas. That show has 14,000 tickets out. I think they're going to get to the 18,000 they have set up. And I think as hot as the TV has been and as hot as some of these programs feel, they have a chance to put 20,000 people in that baseball stadium. We'll see as we get closer. They don't have a niche audience. They have a large audience of people who watch the shows and pay for the shows. And then, by the way, they do the best wrestling pay-per-view numbers by far since WWE has left pay-per-view. And it's not as if TNA isn't out there. Is TNA ever doing 120,000 pay-per-view buys?
Hell no.
I mean, how many other wrestlers was New Japan doing 120, 140,000 pay-per-view buys when they tried it a couple times in the US? And there's other companies too that have done Are any of these companies on Fight or whatever it's called now doing 120,000 buys? If they were, they'd be on proper pay-per-view and not on Fight. So I think a lot of times, even the people who aren't approaching it from a bad faith standpoint don't give AEW as much credit as they deserve. And maybe that's because they're constantly beaten down by the bad faithers. And it's not all bad faithers. Some people with bad AEW opinions just don't know what they're talking about. That's another thing too. You could say it's all bad faith. There's bad faith out there. There's no question. Okay, the troll accounts and things like that. But there's other people who just don't know how to analyze this stuff. And they just talk out their ass because they don't understand what they're talking about. And I think maybe that wears down the people who are trying to give honest analysis and do approach AEW analysis from a positive standpoint, because there's no way to analyze what Tony Khan has done other than it's a massive success. There's just no way around it. And the question I always say to pose to people who think AEW is dying or AEW is failing, or, Tony Khan fumbled his chance to create a wrestling company, is I would ask those people if they're not people who are bad faithers, if they're just people with bad takes. The question I always would challenge these people with, if you're given the chance, is, okay, if WWE didn't exist, would you still consider AEW as is, with their current viewership, their current ticket sales, their current attendances, their current pay-per-view buys, would you consider AEW as is a success or a failure? And if the answer is I would still consider it a failure, these people, then just stop talking to them.
Right,
they don't know what they're talking about. It's going to make a shit ton of money. They have the huge media rights deal. They do $1 million gates. No, they're not doing their peak attendance that they've done historically. Their pay-per-view hasn't dropped. Their pay-per-view is trending up since the start of the company. Okay, their viewership might be down. Some of that is the cable universe. Some of that is there's just, we've been over their television numbers a million times. Their attendance is very clearly down. It's plateaued at a certain level now. But wrestling ebbs and flows. We know that. AEW as a business, honestly, has stabilized. It's like, okay, here we are. We do 4,000 people for TV. We do 600 to 700,000 people and a 0.15 to a 0.18 every week for Dynamite. And that's kind of where they've stabilized. They do 120 to 130,000 pay-per-view buys. That's where they live now with their massive television contract. And where they live right now is the second most successful wrestling promotion in the history of the United States.
That's exactly what I was going to say.
And maybe the world.
I was going to say, at the end of the day, the best thing you could say to anybody who says that is find me the second best. I mean, they're inarguably, at least of the modern era, the second most successful wrestling company in American history.
And maybe world history.
Yeah.
If you're looking at revenue.
And sustainably, too, because, the people say, the Monday Night Wars and WCW. Yeah, WCW was very successful for 2 years. You know what I mean? And then very unsuccessful for most of the other years surrounding that. So, yeah, sustainably, AEW's been successful longer than almost any other wrestling company ever in American history, except for one other company.
Yeah. So, and Forbidden Door is just another reminder of that.